Hello, my name is Isaac Cervantes. I'm a student at Vanguard University of Southern California. I'm a history and political science major, and this is my presentation on the Australian film industry. Now for a quick overview of the topics that I'll be covering in this presentation. To begin with, the introduction. In the introduction, I will cover some quick facts about the industry. Next, I will go into the origins of the industry with some background information and where it all began. And then the development. This will cover the evolution and the lead up into the next topic, the Golden Age. The Golden Age is the prime of the industry, and I'll also talk about some globalization in this section. Then I'll talk about the production, streaming services, and companies that help to make the industry what it is today. Then I'll go into some staples of the industry, which will be some famous films and some actors that were in those films, also the numbers that those films did. Next, I'll go into some famous actors, where they're from, how they got into acting, some films they were in, and how they contributed to the industry. Then we'll talk about the move to American films by some famous Australian actors. Then the rating system and censorship enacted by the Australian government. Now for the introduction. Australia has one of the top 10 highest grossing film industries in the world, and it made nearly 900 million US dollars in the year 2021 as a country. Being top 10, this puts it up there with the likes of US and Hollywood, as well as China and many other countries that have had very successful industries in the past decades. It also has an average theater ticket cost of 16 Australian dollars or around 10 US dollars, and this is very similar to the prices in the United States. The industry began in the year 1906, and Australians are large consumers of American films, and the industries are very closely tied together. The origins of the industry. The Australian film industry was said to have begun with the story of the Kelly Gang, which was a 70-minute black and white film that was released in 1906. This film was directed by Charles Tate and is said to have been the first full-length feature film in the world. This means that it was longer than 45 minutes, which anything shorter than that would be considered a short film. So this is the first full-length feature film. It was considered lost until 1976, when multiple small segments of it were discovered and pieced back together. Pictured on the right is one of those segments. Now for the development of the industry. After the success of the story of the Kelly Gang, the start of World War I led to a lull in the film industry. In the time following World War I, leading into World War II, not many films were made. In order to counteract this, Ken G. Hall, who is pictured on the right, established Cinesound Productions in 1931, attempting to follow the American Hollywood model. But like I said, the start of another world war led to the stifling of the industry at this time. In 1958, the Australian Film Institute was formed. Although this time period didn't produce any major hits, it would lead into an era that would come to shape the industry. This era came to be known as the Golden Age of Australian film, and took place in the 70s and 80s. John Gorton, who is pictured below, was the Prime Minister of Australia from 1968 to 1971 and initiated several forms of government support for the film and arts, including the development of the Australian Film Development Corporation. This era produced the most mainstream hits of any Australian film era and led to the industry's recognition on the world scale. This recognition led to a growing feminist movement around that time, which led to growth in the industry and took place at the 1975 International Women's Film Festival. This was actually the first women's film festival in the world. On the topic of globalization, Australia is actually very important on the global scale because of its world-class studio facilities as well as its animation and visual effects studios. It also has many filming locations that can double as almost anywhere in the world because of its diverse landscape. This is very intriguing to those trying to make films on the world scale. Production in the Australian film industry. Some of the major production companies of the Australian film industry include Village Roadshow Studios, Docklands Studios Melbourne, Fox Studios Australia, and the South Australian Film Corporation. What many people don't know is that the Walt Disney Corporation and the Warner Brothers Corporation produce many films in Australia. The big five for streaming in Australia are Prime Video, Disney Plus, Netflix, Hulu, and YouTube. This is very similar to the United States. Now for some staples of the industry. On the far left is Crocodile Dundee, which was released in 1986. A quick plot synopsis reads: An American reporter goes to the Australian outback to meet an eccentric crocodile poacher and invites him to New York City. This won 3 awards and was nominated 12 times. In the middle is Australia, a film released in 2008 that features Hugh Jackman and Nicole Kidman, two native Australian actors. In 1939, an English woman inherits a sprawling ranch in northern Australia and reluctantly makes a pact with a stockman to drive 2,000 head of cattle over unforgiving landscape. This won 15 awards, had 37 nominations, and is actually the highest grossing Australian film of all time. On the far right is Mad Max. This was released in 1979, and a quick synopsis is: in a self-destructing world, a vengeful Australian policeman sets out to stop a violent motorcycle gang. This movie is starring Mel Gibson. It won 6 awards and had 8 nominations. In his later career, Mel Gibson went on to star in many American films and also to produce the American film The Passion of the Christ, which depicts the crucifixion of Jesus. In all three of these famous Australian films, a sense of strong Australian nationalism and a love for Australian culture can be seen. This seems to be a very important theme to a lot of Australian films. Now for some famous Australian-born actors. First off, Hugh Jackman. Hugh Jackman was born in Sydney in 1968 and attended the Western Australian Academy of Performing Arts. His first major American film that he was a part of was X-Men in the year 2000, and then after that he came back to Australia to do the film Australia in 2008. He was also a part of Prisoners in 2013 and did many musicals, including The Greatest Showman. Next, Russell Crowe. Russell Crowe was born in 1964 in Wellington, New Zealand, before shortly moving to Sydney, Australia at a very young age. He was originally a child star in Australian television and had his first breakout Australian film with Romper Stomper in 1992. He then went on to do The Sum of Us, an American film, in 1994, which blew up his American film career, which led to many famous films, including LA Confidential in 1997 and Gladiator in the year 2000. Next, Margot Robbie. Margot Robbie was born in 1990 in Dalby, Australia, and started her a career in the Australian soap opera Neighbours in 1985. Her American career started in Martin Scorsese's Oscar-nominated film The Wolf of Wall Street in 2013. Subsequent films include Suicide Squad in 2016 and Barbie in 2023. She is one of the biggest American actresses at this very moment. The move to American films. Beginnings. Most Australian actors and actresses start their careers with television shows and or other smaller acting roles. These smaller roles lead into slightly bigger roles, which lead to much better opportunities in the future. Opportunity. When given the chance, many Australian actors and actresses choose to try for roles in American films because of the prominence of Hollywood and its much greater impact on a worldwide scale. Success. As the trend shows, many Australian-born actors and actresses find great success in the United States, and even some of the biggest names in Hollywood today, like Margot Robbie, made their start in Australia. Also, Australians in the American industry tend to go back to Australia to contribute to the industry where they began. Examples of this would be Hugh Jackman and Nicole Kidman coming back from American films to do the Australian film Australia. There also seems to be a trend of Australian actors sticking together in America. An example of this would be Guy Pearce and Russell Crowe in the movie LA Confidential, both Australian-born actors. The rating system and censorship in Australia. There are 5 major categories, the first of which is G. The G classification is suitable for everyone. G products may contain classifiable elements such as language and themes that are very mild in impact. Next is PG, or parental guidance. This may contain some content that children find confusing and upsetting and may need the guidance of parents. M, for mature. Not recommended for children under the age of 15. It can include violence and themes that require a very mature outlook. Those under the age of 15 may legally access this material with the permission of a parent or guardian. R, restricted. R films contain 18 plus material restricted to adults only. This person may be asked for proof of their age. and a parent or guardian can still allow a child to see this with their permission. The next category is X. This is restricted to adults only and is a special classification that legally restricts the category to those under the age of 18. The Australian rating system is very similar to that of the United States. However, they lump video games and movies together, so the M rating, which is only in American video games, is put into the Australian rating system for both video games and films. Now for some aspects of censorship in the Australian film industry. While the US rating system is run by the MPAA, a private organization, the Australian rating system is run by a government body, the Australian Classification Board. If a film goes unclassified by the board, it is essentially banned. In conclusion, the Australian film industry brings the 10th largest film revenue in the world despite a lull of hits in recent years. They have contributed much to the world of film, including the first feature film, dozens of amazing actors, and a multitude of blockbusters of their own. I hope to see a rebirth of the industry in the future, as well as a new wave of famous actors. Thank you for watching.